I woke up 20 hours after delivering my baby. My body swollen, very dark, and a trachea tube in my mouth. So I couldn't talk, and numerous tubes were coming from my body. I just laid there in a daze for a while, just trying to figure out what had happened, trying to make sense of this. I gazed up at the clock. It was 8:20 in the morning. As I saw the sun started to peek through the window, I slowly inspected my body, trying very hard to remember why I was here. I placed my hands over my belly and panic set in, and I started wondering what had happened. Is he still alive? As my negative thoughts ran wild, my mother walked into the room with a coffee in her hand. She was relieved to see me awake. She smiled and sat on the edge of the bed. But just as I saw tears rolling down her cheek, I quickly suspected the worst. Oh no, maybe he didn't survive. As she gathered her thoughts, I was so desperately seeking answers. But before she could say a word, 3 doctors walked into the room to explain what I had experienced and the condition of my baby. As they introduced themselves and started to explain, what I had experienced was called amniotic fluid embolism. This is a very rare, life-threatening condition. I started to tune out. I just wanted to know if my baby was still alive and doing okay. And just at that moment, a doctor came over, held my hand, and said, "You delivered a healthy baby boy. He's in the NICU unit and is doing great and will be ready to be discharged in a few days." I immediately started to cry. I was just so relieved. She told me babies aren't normally allowed in the ICU, but they'll make an exception and bring him up later today so that I can see him. And then the doctors continued to explain what had happened. I had 3 consecutive emergency codes called on me: blue, pink, and omega. And I also required 30 units of blood and blood products. And it was at that moment that I realized how extremely lucky I was to survive. 9 days later, I walked out of the hospital with my baby in arms. And as we drove home, it was just so refreshing to feel the sun on my face, to hear the annoying noise of construction, while at the same time just excited to get a nice, warm, home-cooked meal. However, as I was driving home, the thought came about me about coming home without him. That felt unimaginable. What could have been the happiest week of my life was filled with flashbacks of what ifs, of what could have been a tragic ending. You see, birth trauma is quite common, yet many women don't talk about it. In the United States alone, 4 million women give birth each year, of which 50,000 will have a traumatic birth experience. Many families are left in shock when they get home. Some return home without their loved ones. And we all know how exciting this time is after giving birth to a baby. But if the mother has had a traumatic experience, rarely is she acknowledged about her experience on an emotional or even a mental level. So today I want to talk to the mothers and families who have experienced a birth complication. Let's face it, you have survived one of the worst things imaginable, and yet you still have to raise a baby, take care of the other kids if you have, and maybe go back to work before you're ready, mentally or even emotionally. This can be a very lonely and a stressful time for you. I know firsthand because I've been there. But now I'm here to offer some support and some guidance in how I can help you heal and move forward. In the first month of my recovery, I was still physically weak, not able to hold my baby, not able to breastfeed. My throat was even still sore from the trachea tube. There were days that I felt very depressed. I would watch my son as he slept and I would question myself, like, why did this happen to me? All I wanted was a normal birth. Was there something else that I could have done? Was there something that I could have done to avoid this? Then there were days where I just give thanks, being so grateful and blessed that we were alive. I was very fortunate to have a social worker come and follow up with me every few days to check and see my progression and answer any questions I may have. She was a great lifeline for me during this period of time, which I really didn't even know I needed. As I tried to make sense of this condition and what it was, and if there was anyone else who had experienced something similar, I found a Facebook group of surviving mothers of amniotic fluid embolism. And it was just so comforting to be around these women who shared similar stories. And they were strong and very inspiring women. And we continued to support each other. But as time went on, I felt like I was still in a perpetual state of being stuck and didn't know how to get help. And this was when I realized that I could not stay in this place of mourning for a long time. And I just needed to find a way how to manage my pain and heal emotionally and mentally. So for the past 4 years, it's been my passion. And I've asked myself, like, how can women heal from a traumatic birth? After speaking with some mothers, doctors, and nurses, I ended up writing a book on my story and part of my healing journey. And now, as an advocate of the Amniotic Fluid Embolism Foundation, my goal is to support other surviving mothers heal. One of the most important things that I've learned in the last 2 years after trial and error is that healing isn't linear. It has its ups and downs. Different treatments help at different times of healing, at different stages of healing. And among all the women and traumatic survivors that I spoke to, I realized that there are 3 stages of your journey on healing. And that's becoming self-aware, staying grounded in who you are becoming, as well as getting cleared on your desired life. Now, the first stage of getting awareness is really reflecting on where you are now since your trauma. For some mothers, you might be in a place of overwhelm. You might be feeling anxiety or just in survival mode. This was me for a while. However, I chose to focus on the lessons that I learned about myself during this transition period and growth. When I look back on this time, when my son was 2 years old, I went through a divorce. I didn't have much finances at the time. I wasn't working. And there was just something that was deep down inside of me. I needed to trust and just know that everything was going to work out. So wherever you are right now is exactly where you need to be on your healing journey. Next was getting grounded and getting aligned with who you are becoming. You know, as a single mother, it was very difficult and a very difficult transition period for me. I felt lost. I felt hurt, wrapped up in all my thoughts on who I am, where I'm going, what I wanted. And I had to focus on, I'm a mother, blessed with a child from God, the greatest gift you could ever want. But somehow every year as we celebrate his life, just knowing that this will always be tied to this traumatic experience. But choosing to celebrate his life and be present is where the grounding begins. And then finally, living the life you desire. Finding your rhythm again, recreating that new life for yourself and your family. I remember a time when I had a muscle spasm in my back and I just fell down on my knees and I couldn't move. My 6-year-old son came running to me and asked me, "What happened, Mommy?" Before I could say anything, he quickly ran into the kitchen, got up on the counter, grabbed my medicine bag and brought it back to me. And I asked him, "How did you know that I needed this?" Anyway, I took the medicine and I stayed there for about an hour, just trying to gain back my strength. And then he came over and wrapped his little arms around my neck and said, "Mommy, everything is going to be all right. I love you." And he gave me a kiss. And in that moment, that sparked fire inside of me that has been burning ever since. Just knowing that he could watch out for me when I'm down, I have to keep pushing forward, not only for him and for myself, but for those mothers who need help through their pain and their recovery. A traumatic birth is one of the worst, disheartening experiences a mother could ever endure. So for those mothers, healing is possible, but at your own pace. And most certainly, you will come out even better on the other side. Thank you.